Hello, and welcome to another session in our series of Kentucky 4-H virtual learning experiences. In November, we have been talking a lot about civic engagement and citizenship. This session is going to continue with that aspect and talk about the Thanksgiving holiday and what we have done over the years to celebrate, and also different cultural aspects about the holiday and experiences. We hope that you enjoy this virtual learning experience, and we hope that you are applying what you are seeing in each of our weekly virtual learning experiences. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's talk about what we think of when we say the word Thanksgiving. Well, if we break that up into the two words, thanks and giving, it will help us understand the importance about the day itself. Now, let's not think so much about the historical aspects right now. Let's look about what the day means to us now. If we break the day up and we look at the first word, thanks. So when we give thanks for something, we show gratitude for something that has been bestowed upon us or given to us. And so we need to be thankful for what we have, whether we have something small or something large. You know, that's the ultimate purpose of this day, is showing thanks and showing gratitude for what we have been given. The second part of the word is very important also. The word is giving. It's a time for us to give back to others. So I hope that you are taking the opportunity, even during the time of this pandemic and COVID-19, that you are somehow taking the opportunity and showing others your gratitude toward them for what they have given you. And so that's what we hope that you get out of this session. Now let's talk about the historical aspects of Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving in the United States is a national holiday. It's traditionally celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November each year. Those days have fluctuated over the years, and so we will be talking about that little during this session. Now, traditionally, we think of the first Thanksgiving occurring in 1621, when the Plymouth colonists who were leaving England, when they were leaving and they came to the New World and they met with the Native Americans there, and they celebrated that autumn harvest feast together. And so that's what we usually think as the traditional beginning of the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States. So over the hundreds of years since then, the purpose of the day has changed. The date that we hold Thanksgiving on has changed. And do you know that it really wasn't until 1863, during the Civil War, that President Abraham Lincoln made a national day, or proclaimed that there should be a national day of Thanksgiving? And so there are some interesting things that I want to share with you. Let's go back to the very first one, based on what our American tradition says. So in September of 1620, there were things going on in England. There were a lot of people who believed that they were being persecuted because of their religion. They believed that they were not able to be landowners or business owners because of their personal beliefs and their living habits. So they got really tired. So they heard of this opportunity of this new world. And they decided as a group that they would leave England for the new world. And so there were around 102 passengers plus the ship's crew. And so they left from Plymouth, England on the ship named the Mayflower. All right. So they were religious separatists, and they were seeking a new home so that they could, what they thought they could worship their Creator in a more free way. But they also wanted the opportunity to be landowners and entrepreneurs, and so that was also a reason that they wanted to come. Did you know that it took over 2 months on the Mayflower for what we call them pilgrims now, and so those colonists, it took them over 2 months to sail from England to the coast of North America. Actually, records show that it was around 66 days. They first dropped anchor at the tip of Cape Cod. So that was way in the northeastern part of what we consider the United States now. They stayed there a while before they then migrated to about a month later. So remember, this is 3 months at that point. So then they crossed the Massachusetts Bay, is what it was called, or it would later be called. And so they landed on this area of the sea there, and they named it Plymouth Rock. And because that was just something that they wanted to say, this was their new Plymouth. This is where they had reached in their hope for religious freedom and land ownership and entrepreneurship opportunities. So now think about this. So they started in September. So even when they got to what they considered Plymouth in the New World, that was 3 months. So that's in the middle of winter or at the beginning of winter. And so the majority of them stayed on the ship. Now some of them would get off and go and try to catch fish or find food or sustenance during that time. But just keep that in mind, that they did not start their settlement until later on that spring. So here they came. They had to stay on that ship. There were a lot of disease that occurred during that time. There were a lot of deaths that occurred that time. So by the spring of that next year, there were many of them that had passed away. It's estimated that only about 50 to 55 of the original passengers were, plus the crew, had lived during that time to start the new settlement. Now, once they came into the spring, they had to do a lot of things. They were malnourished, they were ill. I mean, they didn't know how to survive in this new world that they were living in. Well, they were very thankful when they were greeted shortly by someone from the Abenaki, a Native American tribe, who was able to speak English. And this person worked with them and found out about them and told them some stuff about the neighboring tribes and the Native Americans that were living there. Well, he left, and later, we don't know for sure when, but within a couple of weeks, another Native American from the Pawtuxet tribe, and his name was Squanto, came and became a conversation with the settlers there, the pilgrims. Now, Squanto could speak English because he actually had been kidnapped as a child, taken to England, and then was somehow able to make it back to his what Native American lands there in the New World. And so he served as kind of a liaison between the pilgrims and the tribes that were near them. Now, during this time, the Squanto worked with the pilgrims, and he taught them how to fish in the streams. He taught them skills like extracting syrup out of the maple trees so that they could use that for sweeteners. He taught them how to raise corn and other vegetables. He taught them what vegetables or plants not to touch because of, that they were poisonous. So how thankful that I hope that those pilgrims were that that Squanto came into their lives. Now, after that first year, the governor at the time, William Bradford, wanted to offer a celebratory feast to give thanks to their Creator and also to give thanks to the local tribes who had helped them and during this past year. And so a lot of people think that, this Thanksgiving happened in just a couple hours. But actually, this was a multi-day feast. Actually, some say it lasted for 3 days. Just think about a feast that lasted 3 days. And so this is where we get the idea of what the first Thanksgiving was. Now, we have to also think about this, that they were a lot different. It was a lot different than what we would think now. For instance, there were no stoves, there were no, big bags of salt or big bags of sugar. So, we didn't have the desserts or the pies or those types of things that what we think happened on Thanksgiving today. And the menu was probably a little bit different. We do know that based on the journals that were kept, and the personal diaries, that there was meat, there were fowl, there was deer, there was fish, there were vegetables that were eaten. And if you think about it, though, they had to rely a lot on the Native Americans to show them how to prepare this first meal. And so again, how thankful I hope they were for the Native Americans. As a matter of fact, we have an excerpt from one of the historians. His name was Edward Winslow, and he wrote, "Our harvest being begotten in, our governor sent 4 men on fowling, so that we might, after a special manner, rejoice together, after we had gathered the fruits of our labors." And so, he was talking about, the people of the colony as well as, and he goes on to say, among us, the greatest King Massasoit, and some 90 men. So, King Massasoit was a chief, an Indian Native American tribal chieftain, and so he brought 90 people with him to this feast. How awesome. And there's records of them that saying that they killed the deer that was used to eat in that first Thanksgiving. And so they gave thanks to their Creator for allowing this feast to happen. And so, another reason for us to be thankful now because of what that special day. We also hear that there was another day of Thanksgiving in 1623. This one a little bit different. They were giving thanks for the breaking of a drought that had occurred, and they were afraid that that year's harvest was going to be destroyed, and so they had actually the governor had decreed a fast, a religious fast, to pray that the drought be lifted. And so when the drought was lifted, they had another feast in 1623. So we see the tradition starting for a day of Thanksgiving. Now, during the next hundreds of years, there were no set days. As a matter of fact, some of the states have multiple days of Thanksgiving through the years. Some would have one during the year. But we also see that the southern states and the western states did not celebrate the concept of Thanksgiving at first, because it was more centered in the northeastern United States. As a matter of fact, we see that in 1827, the magazine editor Sarah Hale, an awesome author at the time, she, by the way, was the author, or attributed as the author of the nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, started a campaign to have Thanksgiving Day established as a national holiday. So a lot of times we hear her as credited with the nickname, the Mother of Thanksgiving. Well, she finally got the attention of President Lincoln, and in 1863, in the middle of the Civil War, President Lincoln proclaimed a day of Thanksgiving. Now, the interesting thing about this is that President Lincoln wanted to have this as a day to commend to the Creator, a day of thanks and a day of healing for the country, because we were in civil war. And so that was one of the particular reasons that President Lincoln wanted to host or have a day of Thanksgiving. So they continued with the tradition again, and then in 1941 there was a bill proposed and passed that made Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday in November. Now, I want to go back real quick, and I want to say this, it's very important, is that our Native American and Alaskan Native American feel sometimes that the way that Thanksgiving is presented is not the most factual, and we want to make sure that we mention that, and we understand that there was a lot of strife between the settlers that came from from Europe, and the Native Americans that were here already, and we see that strife continuing for hundreds of years, and unfortunately that was a sad occurrence that had to that occurred, and so we wanted to make sure that people understood that there, in addition to Thanksgiving, there's actually a date that is granted that is called the Native American Heritage Day. Now, Native American Heritage Day is traditionally celebrated the day after Thanksgiving. This year, it will be on November 27th. This is a day that is set forth to commemorate the wonderful and awesome contributions of Native Americans and American Indians and Alaska Natives, and their contributions to the culture of America, Northern America, and the United States that we have now. And I wanted to make sure that we mentioned Native American Heritage Day, which will be November 27th. It has such a wonderful history as well. A member of the Blackfeet Nation, his name was Red Fox James, rolled across 24 states in 1916 to talk to the governmental leaders of those states to try and get this day begun as a national holiday. How awesome and dedicated was he? And so you see states begin to offer that day of Thanksgiving as well, or a celebration. And then so in 1990, then President George Bush celebrated signed a proclamation also making November National American Indian Heritage Month. And we're so proud that that was done in 1990 as well. In closing, we wanted to give you an activity that you could do as a family. We know that our families are not going to be meeting now this year in large numbers. We have to be safe. We have to stay healthy. A lot of times we have to remain socially distant from those that we care about the most for their safety and ours. And so we understand that. I wanted to give you an activity that you could do with your family no matter where you are. And this is a family gratitude tree. Now, I can't draw very well, so I printed mine off of the internet. And so a free website, of course, I will say that. And what this activity is for you as a family to sit down together and label things that you are grateful for. What do you have to show gratitude for? What are you thankful for in your life? I've got little sticky notes here. You can use little ones, you can use bigger ones, or you can write directly on the page. But all that we thought this would be something simple, but something fun and engaging for the entire family. So sit down together, think about what you have to be grateful for this year, even during this time of the pandemic, and write this on this gratitude tree, save it, and that way you can look back on it one day and show those who come after you that even in the face of adversity, we were able to give thanks. We want to thank you again for joining us on this Kentucky 4-H virtual learning experience this November. We hope that you will have a reason to find this day for Thanksgiving. My family and I still celebrate this as part of our religious heritage as well as our cultural heritage as well. But we want you to celebrate how you and your family feel the most appropriate. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. God bless you, and we'll see you next time on our virtual learning experiences.